Hey y'all, Data Guy here. And today I got a killer video for you on all the latest and greatest new features coming in Airflow 2.7. So the first one I want to show is the new chain linear function. And so what this allows you to do is actually chain groups of even task groups together to create uh, conditions such that, hey, if I want to run anything that's next in step in this chain, all of the previous chain steps and their task groups and any tasks contained within those task groups have to complete. So you can see that relationship represented here, where you have two different task groups that both must fully complete before any of these three tasks can start. And then thus you have, these three task groups must all complete before any of these tasks can start. So you can mix task groups and traditional tasks interchangeably. And then the way you implement this in your code is just by basically just using the old chain function, but now chain linear, where you can have task groups kind of within these square brackets that create groupings of both task groups and regular tasks. And you can see those valued here. So you can basically treat task groups in terms of dependencies as if they were just tasks. So really good feature if you're saying, hey, I want all these parallel tasks, all these task groups to complete before any step of the next step of any task within the next step of the pipeline actually triggers. So you don't have them maybe triggering before that data that's being processed within those task groups has actually arrived. And so just easy way to set those relationships without having to do bitmap, all the different components of those groups together. So try it out. Now, the second feature I want to show you is the new keyboard shortcuts. So you can see a list of these by going Shift and then question mark on your keyboard. And this will show you all the different new keyboard shortcuts you have to mark DAGs and tasks as successful or failed. So basically just a quicker way for you to change task states. If you're running through trying to rerun tasks, mark them as failed, you can just go in here instead of needing to actually click into a menu, mark state, and do it that way. Now I can just say Shift F and it's marked as failed, or I can do Shift S, it's a success. And if I just want to clear the task state, I can do that as well. And that'll clear all my downstream tasks. So really, and you can see they're already going to start running because they're already triggered. But just another great quality of life feature, so you don't have to fuss around, just clicking a bunch of buttons. You can just stay on your keyboard, rip shortcuts all day, and save yourself some time. Now, the next feature is a little. It's really cool, but it's not that interesting to show. So basically, what it is a new environment variable that you can set at the DAG level that will set all tasks to default use or default become deferrable. So instead of you needing to configure every operator to mark it as a deferrable operator so that it frees a worker slot, passes the polling off to the triggerer, now you can just set that by default by changing the environment variable, which is just Airflow operators default deferrable equals true. So any of the Airflow operators, you can now run them as deferrable by default. Now, the next feature, and this is probably the one I'm most excited about, is the new cluster activity tab. So just on the top of your Airflow instance, you now have a tab that will show you information at a macro scale of all of your pipelines. So it'll show you, your pool slots, your DAG runs, the health of the different components that are supporting your Airflow environment. And you can also view historical metrics. So for DAG run types, I can look at which ones were scheduled, which ones were backfilled, which ones were dataset triggered. And for task instance states, I can filter for hey, I want to look at any tasks that are stuck and queued. I have that functionality where I can filter for any of these different task states, and I can filter across my entire environment rather than just looking at each pipeline in isolation and having to constantly switch between pipeline views. And you can also change the start and end date of this. So you can expand the historical context. So, you can slice and dice, hey, I want to look at any DAG failures that happened in this week when I know something was funky was going on, and get that information really quickly without having to really dig into, all of your different DAGs to find these specific instances. And the next feature I have to show you is a really interesting one, and that is the new setup and teardown tasks. And so basically what these are task decorators that allow you to define basically the start and end of a resource that you want to use. So setup and teardown is kind of exactly what it sounds like. A lot of times when you're running an Airflow DAG, you'll have to spin up a table, a database, something that is only used for the context of that DAG. Maybe a staging table just to load some data, do some transformations before it goes into production. And you want to make sure that that table is killed after those transformations are completed, because you don't want it to be staying there wasting resources for you. And so what setup teardown tasks allow you to do is basically say, hey, I want to define this task, and you can see this dotted line here, so the start of it is the setup task, and the end of it is the teardown task, where what I'm creating the CSV, I'm opening up kind of a setup teardown instance. And what that means is that even if any of those tasks was in between setup and teardown fail, that teardown operation will still occur, because we want to kill that resource no matter what. We don't want it to, again, continue clogging up our compute, costing us more money, and just giving us more efficient use of resources. So this could be, maybe a SageMaker model. This could be an EC2 instance. This could be whatever you're using that you want to make sure that it's killed after it's been used for however long you need it for, to make sure that you're not paying for resources that you're not using or that you don't really need. And the way you implement this is also really simple. So all you have to do is just add this. If we find our setup task here, our fetch data task with this at setup flag. So instead of at task, you just say at setup, and it'll still create it as a task, but you're defining it as a setup task. So here we have at setup, and then down here at the end, we have at teardown, where we're deleting that CSV, and making sure that, hey, we don't actually pay for a CSV that we're not using. Obviously, this is a pretty silly example because the CSV doesn't cost anything, but it just helps, for keeping it clean. Let's say, I was constantly reusing that name as my staging table, then I would need to make sure it gets deleted before I ingest that new data, or we could run into some conflicts very easily. And one thing to note here also is that you can have setup teardown task nested within other setup teardown tasks. You can have them set up within task groups, or as you can see here in this limitation, we have a larger, say, hey, outer setup, outer teardown, but within we also have a smaller inner setup, inner teardown, just for this specific series of tasks. So you can really get crazy with kind of provisioning and deprovisioning resources with these features. So I'm honestly really excited to see kind of what people take and do with this. And those are really the main features I wanted to check out. So there, I'll drop a link below to the list of the full release notes. But I thought those ones were the most interesting. The rest of them are, things like, hey, DB upgrade is now DB migrate. And there's some new, flags and stuff added as well. But these are the really crucial ones that I think will really upgrade your DAGs. So try them out today. If you like this video, please subscribe and have a good one. Data Guy out.